it's me, Ellie. Welcome back to my little bookish channel. Today we're just doing a reading wrap up for February. February was surprisingly quite a cool reading month, actually. I read some great books and I can't wait to talk about them. If you see me look down, it's because I'm looking at my notes in my journal. I read 11 books this month, which I'm pretty proud of considering that I read an epic fantasy trilogy and it was just a good time overall. Really happy with it, really happy with my reading. I'm ticking things off my goals and intentions for this year. So I hope this momentum kind of continues. Anyway, let's just begin. I'm going to talk about the books that I didn't like first. I want to get them over with, and then we can just gush about the books that I absolutely adored. So I finished reading White Sand. So last month? Yeah. Last month I read White Sand Volume 1, which is part of the Cosmere. The story is by Brandon Sanderson, but it's been adapted to a graphic novel form. And so the script is written by someone else. And I didn't really like Volume 1. It was fine, but I made the commitment to continue on reading the other 2 volumes of White Sand because I want to read all of the Cosmere. So I put Volume 2 and 3 on hold at my library. They finally came in. I didn't like them. I did not like them, I'm sorry to say. There's something about it. The story is very mediocre. The world building is not to the level that I'm used to with Brandon Sanderson, and I feel like my expectations, it's my own fault because graphic novel world building is very different to epic fantasy world building, but I've read some incredible graphic novels with incredible world building. It just fell flat, and Volume 2 was such a filler. Nothing really happens. I'm not excited about the characters. I don't care about what they're going through. Kenton, I don't think it's Kent. I think I was calling him Canton in my last wrap up. I don't care. I don't care about the politics of the Sandmasters. I don't care about the politics of this world. I don't care about finding out why this random other people hate them. I don't care. And nothing is really made sense. We don't know things. And I'm wondering if it's because there's supposed to be more volumes in the White Sand kind of series. But please, I beg of you, don't. You don't need to. There's no purpose to it. Nothing happens that is interesting. And the artwork changes randomly and it's horrible. It was boring, dull, super bland characters, bland world. Everything was just bland, very mediocre. Just don't read it. Well, or do and make your own judgment because this is all just my opinion, obviously. And then the next book, I just spilled over my pile of books. The next book that I didn't like, I gave 2 stars, was such a surprise to me. And it was a huge disappointment for me. I honestly thought that this author was going to be a new favorite or someone at least that I enjoy their work so I could, just be oh, I know that author. I'm just going to read all of his stuff. And I thought that was going to be my gateway into this kind of genre of horror, but it wasn't. I finally read the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. This was atrocious. I can't believe I didn't like this. And I'm not going to talk much about it here because I have an entire reading vlog coming out in a few weeks where you can witness my descent into madness, just being so confused as to why I don't like this. I understand why people like it, but for me, this is not a writing style that I enjoyed. Nothing actually happens. It's all meant to be like foreshadowing and like building to something, but it's boring as fuck. The vampire doesn't vampire enough. And that's wrong. Like, he does do vampire things, but it just felt so ugh, if that makes sense. You have our main character, Patricia, right? If you don't know what this is about, I should probably do that more often. If you don't know what this is about, Patricia, it's in like the 1980s, 1990s. Patricia is a housewife in Florida, and she's just a bit restless. You know, now that she's a mother and a wife, that's all she's identified as. And she kind of like stopped her career to be a housewife and take care of the kids, and she's just bored and she's looking for excitement. She's restless. Her husband is a piece of shit. She has a book club, and then she eventually leaves that book club and they form another one where they read true crime and like books that they actually enjoy. And like the friendship between these women, great. Love that so much. However, this man comes to town. His name is James, and Patricia welcomes him with open arms. I think because there's a man that finally like listens to her when she talks, but she's also just quite friendly. You know, she's never really had to think twice. She's white, you know, she lives in a safe neighborhood. Like, they're all of the same class. Like, she's just very much in her own privileged bubble. So she doesn't really think twice about James. But James is a vampire, and he's out to get people, mainly children, because he's a pedophilic vampire, because of course he is. Like, you're a vampire. You've lived centuries. Be more interesting. I'm sorry. Oh my God, he's so boring, and he's such a fucking man. I don't know, at least Dracula was dramatic. And like, he kind of slayed. You know what I mean? You know the vibe, right? But James was just there. And the fact that I don't know. Anyway, so welcomes him with open arms. Patricia, you know, is fine. And then she kind of slowly realizes that maybe something's not right here. And eventually gets called like crazy. And it's like a time jump. And then actually people start to believe her, and then they end up killing James. Spoiler alert. It could have been better. This book did not need to be this long at all. It needed more like actual horror, or even just suspense. There was a few really interesting scenes with like animals and insects, which that should have been played more, right? Everything else was just boring. And I'm guessing this is because it's more of a character sort of horror, you know, character study. I realized for my horror, I don't enjoy that. I need to be horrified. I need to be on the edge of my seat. I need to be gasping with horror, I've realized, because I can get this type of character work, kind of a slow, gentle sort of, what's going on here? This is a bit weird. In other books, like Night Bitch by Rachel Yoder did this better. And I kept on comparing this book to Night Bitch because it just had the same vibes. As in, this was trying to do what Night Bitch just excels at, right? And it fell flat. I also didn't like how Grady Hendrix writes his female characters. I don't know, they kind of at some points felt like caricatures of what it means to be a woman and a mother and a wife. I needed more rage. I needed more like feralness. You know, there's a fucking vampire around killing children. Like, give me more rage. It was very placid. And there was some, which again, like, I can hear you screaming at me. It's like, oh, but you know, it's of the time. Yeah, well, vampires aren't of the time. This is not based on reality. Okay? You can zhuzh it up. Give me some zhuzh. So that's my issue with this book. It took me so long to read this. It took me 2 months. 2 fucking months to read this book. I don't take 2 months to read a book like this. I didn't like it. I gave it 2 stars because I enjoyed very small aspects of this. Like Patricia was a good character. I just wish that she had more to her. I just wish her relationships with the other women was more of a focus. I wish her husband died. Like, why couldn't her husband be killed in like a glorious vampiric fashion? Like, that would have been amazing. But no, it was just boring. Anyway, I didn't realize how angry I was. I'm gonna stop there because then you can watch the vlog that's coming out soon. Let's talk about books that I actually enjoyed. So we'll start with my 4 stars. I finished this book last night. Hamlet. Yes, I'm better than everyone. I read Shakespeare. This was part of the February book pick for the Well Read Book Club created and hosted by Carolyn Marie at Carolyn Marie Reads. So I read Hamlet for the first time, actually. I really liked it, which I know the shock on my face, but I really liked this. It was so interesting. The character of Hamlet was amazing. It was absolutely fantastic. I read this and also watched the 2018 version of the play with Andrew Scott. Oh my God. It was amazing. I think that really added to my overall enjoyment of this book, because with Shakespeare, that's why I prefer if I'm reading Shakespeare in the past, I always tandem read it with an audiobook, because there are parts of the dialogue that you don't realize, for instance, are said in jest until you listen to it and like the tone, and you understand more of what's happening. It just brings it alive in a way that reading it on paper for me doesn't. So watching Andrew Scott bring Hamlet to life and the rest of the amazing cast, I was laughing at some of the jokes, you know? Like, I was like, oh, haha, I got that. That was funny. Go William. And then other parts where I'm just like, oh, this is really emotional. I feel like I'm teary-eyed. Other parts where I'm like, yes, babe, rage. You know, it was really good. All of the emotions were felt in this. It was great. I'm so happy I read it. I didn't expect to thoroughly enjoy this in the way that I did. And also, I have to say, I haven't watched any other adaptations of Hamlet, only the Andrew Scott one. But the way that they did the ending scene, where like, spoiler if you haven't read Hamlet, where everyone basically dies, you know? And I really liked the way that they interpreted that scene where they're in the afterlife and Hamlet is still kind of doing his little monologue, and he's like farewelling, you know, his mum and his stepdad uncle. Like, it was just really, really coolly done. And I was like, oh, now that makes sense. And then it comes back to like reality with Hamlet's dying body being held by Horatio. And I just really loved the way that they did that. Really loved the way they did that. I do want to read up, like look at No Fear Shakespeare. I don't really get the whole Fortinbras, what's his name? Fortinbras aspect. Like, I don't understand his character. I don't understand that aspect of the ending. I feel like there's political shenanigans that I'm not privy to because I'm not studying it. So I need to look that up. But oh wow. This was a goodie. I really enjoyed myself. I would recommend this if you have a feeling to partake in some Shakespeare. This is a good one. My favorite Shakespeare is still Othello. That's why I gave this one 4 stars, because Othello is up the top. Like, you have everything in that play. It's amazing. But this was really fucking good. And then we'll keep on with the classics. I finally Oh my God. I just sneezed, but I'm back. Okay. I read The Waves by Virginia Woolf. I started reading this when I got sick with a flare-up for the first time in a few months. So I was in my mum's bed because I go into my mum's bed when I'm sick, okay? Don't judge me. It's a comfort thing. And yes, I'm 30 years old. It's okay. I just needed comfort. And for some reason, my brain was like, you need to read Virginia Woolf. So that's what I did. I picked The Waves. This is the only Virginia Woolf book in my collection that I haven't read. I think I've got a collection of like short stories or novellas or essays or something. But this is like the last standalone novel that I have. But I think I've spoken about this in previous videos. I really want to reread a few Virginia Woolf novels because it's been a while. I've been slowly reading through them. But I don't know if you can see it here. Where is it? Oh, you can't see it. It's literally behind me. But I want to read like her diary. And she wrote like a book about books that I want to read. But okay, The Waves. Wow. So this book, very briefly, is about 6 children. And they come together in a type of like schooling environment. And this very small book, but this book is going through different periods of their life as they grow older. Like, it's a very interesting way of doing a sort of coming of age, because it's not like, it is a coming of age, but it's not at the same time. It's just focusing in on how these very different people continue their friendship throughout all these different stages of their lives, and how they in turn engage and interact not only with each other but with the world around them. And then something happens to one of their friends that really has a severe impact on all of them. It's like the shock of it. You didn't expect that he will be in his 20s, he'd be dead, so it was emotional. It was gorgeously written, and I think I understand why Virginia Woolf considers this to be one of her best pieces of work, because holy moly, the way this woman in this book describes things, right? So the way, like, it's very much nature is a huge influence. It's its own character. Nature itself has a perspective. Nature's kind of chorus voice is interweaving these different parts of the different stages of these people's lives. And because of that, the way that Virginia Woolf writes how characters describe other people, for instance, or even their feelings, it's very nature-based. Like, there was this one scene where one of the characters, I forget his name, one of the characters was describing the figure of their headmaster. Like, absolutely insane. They were describing the headmaster's nose, and the way that they did that was talking about how it looks like a mountain on the horizon of a sunset, kind of like this craggly mountain. And it was so beautifully written, and I'm just like, how did she look at that? She looked at a mountain and a sunset and was like, oh my God, that reminds me of a human's nose. How? Like, just the things that she wrote in this book, like, honestly made me look at nature differently. It's like, wow. It was just so beautiful. And it made sense for the story because nature was such a huge part of it. Oh, it was amazing. The writing in this is beautiful. However, I will say, if you don't like stream of consciousness, don't read this book. The way that this book is written, like the actual structure and format of it, is that there are no... Oh, how would I say this? So each perspective of each character is a dialogue. So they all are within like quotation marks. It's not necessarily like we're kind of this omniscient presence and we're reading like a standard book where it's like third person narrative or first person. This is, we're with them, as they're going on with their life, they are describing everything they are seeing. Every like piece of text, see, has a quotation mark. They are speaking aloud what is going on in their minds, and then other characters will just like pop in and continue on, either with the thread that the other character was going on or completely different, and like shifting the perspective of the story. It was very interesting, and it honestly made the reading experience quite unique, actually. I love when authors play with how a novel should be written. And Virginia Woolf is very much one of those authors who like throws the rules out the window and just writes what she wants to write. And this was amazing. Really, really loved it. But I wouldn't recommend it to people unless you have loved Virginia Woolf in the past, because it can be a hard one to get into. So that's The Waves by Virginia Woolf. And my next and last 4-star was this one. Oh my god. The Teller of Small Fortunes by Julie Leong. I loved this. This was so good. This is like cozy fantasy, but it also has some stakes in it, but it's written in a way that is just super gentle and chill. Our main character's name is Tao, and she has like a kind of like a camper van, and she travels around the kingdom telling small fortunes, and that's how she makes a living. And along the way she meets a few different people, and they create this really amazing, gorgeous friendship and basically become family. And that's the crux of this novel. There is this overarching kind of plot line about a missing daughter of one of the people who we meet, and who eventually becomes, part of this type of family. And that was actually really cool. I think having that sort of overarching plot line meant that this book was moving towards something, so it wasn't just like all vibes, no plot. There was plot. I loved how I loved just the way that she went about her life, and she is really, really sensitive but so strong, and once she like loves you, she'll do anything for you. And that's basically what this book is. I loved it. I loved the writing. I loved the world. It was an interesting world, interesting type of magic system, and it's also really just a really important, beautiful book. I just loved it. I really did. And I think if you enjoyed kind of the typical cozy fantasy books, you will enjoy this. You will. It is exactly what it says on the tin. It is just found family going about their lives, but becoming closer and finding a missing daughter, and their love for each other and how they grow with each other is just so adorable. And I will be reading everything that this author puts out in the future. Really liked it. I would also love if there was a sequel, because at the end of this book, Tao does something for, like this, the big authority of magic that basically regulates. And I would be really interested to see like what happens in the future. And I want to see like how her relationship with her mum like heals, because that was really important. I don't know. It was just a really good book. I highly recommend it. Hi, so I completely forgot that I actually read another book that I gave 4 stars. It's Stone Dreams by Akram Alisley. This was for the World Tour Book Club, created and hosted by Emma at the YouTube channel Emmy. This was for the country Azerbaijan, which I had never read anything about that country, nor did I know anything about it. So I'm just going to read a little bit from my notes because it's been a while. It is a novella influenced heavily from the life of the author himself. He was actually exiled by the government, but not necessarily exiled. He's basically imprisoned in his own house and can't leave the main city. It's really sad because he is still so very against the way that the Azerbaijan government treats Armenians. We are introduced to our main character, Sedigli. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing that right. Sadai is an actor and quite an outspoken one, especially against the government. Armenians and Azerbaijanis do not get along. I believe the conflict centers on who belongs to the land. That's what it's the main theme in the novella, and who lays claim to the land. The cultural and religious clashes intensify the conflicts between these two peoples. Sadai feels intense empathy with Armenians and takes on their pain. He is critical and antagonistic towards the government and also towards the Turkish government's actions towards Armenians. The everyday senseless violence towards Armenian people was quite confrontational, ruthless and terrible. Sadai is essentially in a coma throughout most of the novella, so he is reminiscing upon his life and how it has interwoven with really important kind of key Armenian people to his own life. His birthplace of Ailis is a very significant place for both Armenians and Azerbaijanis. This city is almost a character in itself. It's remembered as a mecca of peace and harmony before that was ultimately ruptured. Sadai is considering his life and his purpose through the lens of his faith. Sadai and his people are Muslim and Armenians are Christian. So Sadai questions his God and his understanding of the world, his theology, as a result of what he has witnessed and the cruelty of his country and his people. I really enjoyed reading about a country that I've never really encountered before in fiction, and it really opened my eyes in a lot of different ways. So it was a good book. I recommend it. Okay, let's talk about the 5 stars. So the first 5-star that I read, literally the first book of the month, Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. If you haven't read this, read it immediately. This is so beautiful. It is a story about, well, it's multi-perspective, but we have this sentient octopus named Marcellus. Marcellus lives in an aquarium. He hates being imprisoned in this aquarium, which, go off king, yes. He was found in the ocean. I think he was severely unwell. So the aquarium found him, brought him in to help heal him, but he's been stuck there ever since. And he knows what's going on around him. He reads. So he can tell from his own inscription that they have telling you information about whatever animal that you're seeing in an aquarium, even in a zoo. He knows that it says that he will only live to around about 4 years or something along those lines. And he's been counting down the days of his imprisonment and basically calculating that there is a possibility that he won't be on this earth for much longer, which is heartbreaking. It's absolutely fucking heartbreaking. But Marcellus is a king. He escapes his enclosure every night and goes and eats other aquarium creatures. He's the best. I loved him so much. But on one of these little jaunts that he does, he kind of gets stuck and he can't stay out of the water for very long, and then his system breaks down, or shuts down I should say. That introduces our other main character named Tova. Tova is a recent widow, and her son died 30 years ago, and she's still reeling from the deaths of all those she loves and kind of being alone. But she's the night cleaner at this aquarium, and she sees Marcellus stuck and in a bunch of cords, so she helps break him out and he goes back into his enclosure. But ever since then there's been this connection between them, so Marcellus loves her and Tova is very confused, but it's the most beautiful friendship. Marcellus is so smart and so wonderful that he realizes something of critical importance regarding Tova and her son, and he basically helps Tova realize what he's known all along, which is great. And it connects with the other main character that we have, whose name is Cameron. And the way that these perspectives come together, the way these characters come together. It's so beautiful. I think the way that Marcellus's story ends, I sobbed. I sobbed so hard. Marcellus is beautiful. I sobbed so hard, but it made sense. It made sense. This was just, it's just a novel if you want heartwarming, a very relaxing read, and you love octopuses. It was gorgeous. I would definitely reread this. This has become a comfort read to me. I think the way that Shelby Van Pelt wrote this, amazing. Tova was so great. I really resonated with her. The idea of, growing older and having no one to look after you, and then having friends being like, oh, that's why, we have kids to look after us. And Tova's like, babe, read the fucking room. And then this kind of conversation of having children just so that you have someone to take care of you when you're older. Is that ethical, right? So it was really interesting, and I understood her loneliness, but I just loved the way the story, it brings hope. It's gorgeous, stunning. I will never forget Marcellus. And then we come to the last batch of 5 stars, and I'm going to talk about these books all together. I finally read the Farseer trilogy by Robin Hobb. Yes, I did. Oh my god. Okay, so reading Assassin's Apprentice for the first time was truly a life-changing moment. It reminded me of reading The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan, which is book 1 in the Wheel of Time series. I had a very similar experience when you don't know what you're expecting, and then you open the book and you start reading and you are hooked and you are blown away by the writing, the characters, the world. This was me with this book. I loved this. For an epic fantasy, it's not that large, right? But the way that Robin Hobb introduces Fitz, our main character, and his position in this world, in this story, in this society as a whole, because he's the illegitimate son of a prince. Fascinating. I loved it. I loved it so, so much. I sobbed. This entire trilogy made me cry. Let's just say that, right? Cry. But it was so interesting because we're learning about the sort of magic system along with Fitz. So his confusion is our confusion, okay? Because he doesn't know what's going on, we don't know what's going on. So as he learns, we learn. And it was such a cool way of writing. It's similar to Mistborn trilogy with Vin, right? As Vin was learning everything, we were learning, and it felt really organic and natural as it was explained to her, it was thus explained to us. Very similar thing. It was just really amazing. I loved it. And then we moved to this one. Royal Assassin killed me. Poor Fitz. Let's just say that. Let's just say poor Fitz. Fitz goes through it, and I feel like he will continue to go through it, but he goes through it. And this book really emphasizes the importance of a few key side characters in Fitz's life, like Burrich, like Chade. Verity, oh my god. Prince Verity is the best, okay? He is amazing. I love Prince Verity so much. I will never forget him. He was so good. But wow, right? And I loved, every time I picked up these books, they have little images. And I was like, oh, why is there a wolf? Oh, Night Eyes is a sassy little mister. I love him so much. He's so cool. He's one of the best characters in this series. He's a wolf. He's great. But what I really loved, I loved a lot of things about this trilogy, and this is not just specific to Royal Assassin, but you have many plot lines happening at the same time. So you have one which is just the internal politics of the Farseer family, because they are the royal family of the Six Duchies. And then you have this overarching major thing that's happening with the Red Ship Raiders, who are literally going around the Six Duchies like coastlines and pillaging and slaughtering people. For what reason? But they're also doing this weird thing of being like, hey, we took a bunch of your people from your town. You can either pay us and we'll kill them, or you don't pay us and we'll give them back to you. And obviously the townspeople are like, we don't have money, so we're not going to pay for you to kill them. We just want our people back. But the Red Ship Raiders, they do something. It's called forging by the Six Duchies, because the first real instance of it happening was at a town called Forge, a coastal town, I should say, of Forge. And so they come back not human anymore. Like their soul is taken. They are very much animals, just beasts, very kind of, they want something, they want it now, and they will do anything to kill it. They have no idea, like they don't feel anything, so they can murder their mother or kill their sister without a thought. And so this kind of becomes like a epidemic, really, these random forged people roaming around the coasts of the Six Duchies. And it's heartbreaking, but it ties in so well to the political machinations of what's happening with the Farseer family and fucking Prince Regal. Regal is the overarching villain of this trilogy, and as well as the Red Ship Raiders. It was just remarkably done. So Royal Assassin, everything kind of built up a bit more. Sorry, I have a hair. It's fantastic. It's great. This was so good. This was so good. I didn't really care about the whole Molly plotline. Wasn't a huge fan of it. Molly is just this girl that Fitz falls in love with and stuff happens. I didn't really care about that. It kind of felt like, oh yes, you know, he needs to lose a woman in order to become a man kind of thing. But then I read Assassin's Quest. Holy fucking moly. Most of this book, Fitz is just like walking to places, but I was sat. I was engaged. I was ready. Like, this was incredible. Incredible. And then do you see that picture? Fucking dragons, bitch. I was so excited about the dragons. It was just good. Didn't expect anything, couldn't predict it. I thought the ending was good. I'm really excited to see how this world is built on. I can't wait to meet Fitz again, but obviously I'm going to be devastated. I also loved the character of the Fool. They're so interesting, and I can't wait to read more about them. And yeah, I have a vlog coming out about my reading experience of the Farseer trilogy. That should be coming out in a few weeks, maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 weeks, something like that. I don't remember, but that's it. They're the books that I've read. I had a great time. And I'm looking forward to reading in March, even though semester begins and it's going to be chaotic because I'll be teaching. But I'm so excited about reading. I cannot wait to see what March holds. I am equally more excited to continue reading in the realm of the Elderlings. It's just so cool. I'm reading such cool epic fantasy right now. I am so blessed. This is so much fun. Okay, I'm gonna go now. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll see you next week. Okay.